Hello and welcome. Part three of our series of postgraduate school. What does it mean and what is the value for both families as well as student athletes? And today, I thought we would take a look at a family that has gone through their postgraduate year and now are living as a college student athlete. So that will offer perspective as to what their experience was like. And this is a family that I've known for many decades and a lifelong friend and someone that had no idea about the experience going in. But Russ and Carson Cormier, originally same hometown as myself in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, but family that had relocated from the West Coast east, got caught up in the COVID years, and I tried to get the family to understand the value of the postgraduate year. And Russ and Carson, I first and foremost want to say thank you for donating your time here today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And so, Russ, if you could start us off with, what your thoughts were when I began to kind of convey to you my thoughts or the value of the postgraduate experience and what you thought initially when we were starting to contemplate and consider what turned out to be Phillips Andover.
Yeah, sure. Again, thanks for having us, Walter. I think the idea of broaching the topic of whether it be reclassifying or taking an additional year after high school before college, all of those concepts just seem very foreign when you first think of them and try to understand their value and their benefit. In hindsight now, it makes a lot of sense to have that additional year to, whether it be for Carson to emotionally grow, of course, physically grow, and just be ready to compete with and against men. So in hindsight, it made a lot of sense to finally have that additional year, in our case, the post-grad.
And Carson, share a little bit about, as a student athlete, as a high school senior, Westford Academy, great high school program here in Massachusetts. But what were your thoughts when you began to consider, a postgraduate year?
Yeah, some of my thoughts, I mean, I was obviously very new to it. Like I didn't know much about like anything with like reclassing or postgraduate. So I was like a little skeptical at first, but I knew it was a good opportunity. But when I first got into it, I knew that it was just all benefits, basically the whole year. And, just kind of taking that extra year, you can get some just extra classes, academics, hit on that. And then for the most part, it's, focusing on that baseball aspect and having that extra year to play with an elite group to, prepare myself for the college level.
Carson, if you could, now that you're a college student, some of your teammates at Phillips Andover, whether it's CJ at Holy Cross and others, talk a little bit about the schools that they're now attending, whether it be as a college student athlete or just as a college student.
Yeah. So we had some we had a really good team, and we had some guys that were really talented. Like obviously we had Thomas White go 35th overall in the draft. He was a big, tall lefty, kind of same build as me, topping 98. He was just really, really good, and drew a lot of attention from scouts and, things like that. That's really good visibility, for upcoming drafts, and, kind of getting that scouting on, on yourself, and for me specifically. So we had him, we had Teo Spedicini, go to Yale. He was really smart. That was a really prestigious school. So he got, I think, both worlds of academics and baseball out of that. And then we had, we had
CJ went to Holy Cross.
Play with CJ Egri. He was there a year earlier, but he went to Holy Cross. And I think there was another guy a couple of years prior that went to Holy Cross, and then we had Cole go to Northwestern, which is a very solid school as well overall.
And Russ, I know you as parents, when you were considering the Andover experience, how did it meet your expectations? Did it meet your expectations with regard to preparing Carson as a complete student as well as an athlete with regard to his now home at Texas Christian University?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, at least from Phillips Andover perspective, it's such an exclusive school, and it just has this mystique and aura to it, right? With its rich history, to think that we could be part of that history and attend there was pretty overwhelming, but exciting at the same time. So. It's a school that may not have 5 postgrads on that roster. They may only have 1 or 2 in any given year. So it was great to connect with that school finally and have Carson attend there. And yeah, when you look at the level of play, the coaching that they provided, academics, just the overall experience for Carson to live on his own. It's a boarding school for the first time. All those things added up really to a great school, and there are many similar experiences out there, other post-grad schools. So that made a big difference, I think, to prepare him for what he's now experienced at TCU.
And Carson, as an athlete at a major Division I Power 4 type school, how do you feel that year living on campus at Andover prepared you to be a student athlete at TCU?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest part of that, kind of like the overarching theme of the whole thing, is time management. Because I found out really quick when you get to college, like one of my days will look like I'll get up at 5 a.m. for 6 a.m. weights, and I'll go to class right after we finish at 8 a.m. and I'll have classes throughout the day. I'll finish by like 11. I'll have like about an hour or two to just eat and hang out, and then I'll go to the field until like 6 o'clock for practice, and then I'll eat, do some homework, and go to sleep and do it all again. So, having days as busy as that, it's really beneficial to kind of get used to that, kind of ease into it a little bit more at a high school like that, a boarding school. Not only to just live on your own and kind of experience those, those things of taking care of yourself. It was kind of like a 9-month, almost like sleepaway school. So it was fun, and it was like definitely an adjustment. But, having kind of learning that time management to be self-accountable and, live on your own. I think those were like very big, like learning moments and things that I took in that helped prepare me for college.
Russ, you and I were talking before we got on air here, and the key word that I preach repeatedly over and over for families that some take heed, most do not, is patience. If this process teaches us as parents anything, it's to be patient. And can you kind of, even during your post-grad year, kind of shed some light on you as parents understanding the development process may not meet our timetable as parents, but at the end, it does serve its purpose?
Yeah. So what comes to mind there, Walter, is that throughout the experience of, let's say, Carson's junior year in high school at Westford Academy, the year following that, of course, senior year, typical, recruiting type year, trying to be committed, the additional year at Phillips Andover. I mean, we're talking a 2.5, 3+ year period where you're really trying to connect and find out where your home is going to be, right, as an athlete in college. And I'm just amazed at how many dates as a parent I thought were absolute drop dead dates where something needed to happen and that we needed to make a decision, and that if those dates came and went, that really all was lost, or it would really be super difficult. And in the end, it was much later than I thought, where the offers and the school visits and the really the coaches showing very strong interest, even past the beginning of the calendar year, were not drop dead dates, and that it happened for Carson at a great school at TCU. And I was just amazed at how patient, in hindsight, we really need it to be. And it's a long roller coaster, and it's up and down. Hey, this coach or the school reached out. Boy, that looks really good. Okay, well, maybe that kind of falls through, and you kind of go up and down, and you just have to weather the storm emotionally. And in hindsight, that's the advice I would give to parents. Just try to keep things even keel and let it play out. Let that process play out.
Again, reiterating, Russ and I have kind of known each other since we were kids. And there are days where Russ would call and you could hear the frustration. And he didn't know whether, okay, am I getting good advice? Is this the right path? So on that note, Carson, tell us now, we're second year in at TCU. How has your development gone over the last 4 years, where you and I and Dad and Mom have had our conversations, where you're at today? Was all of that worth it, in your opinion?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think that my path was a lot similar to some guys, but a lot different from most. I think just overall through high school, through even middle school, just growing up, I was kind of like that late bloomer and that slow growth. And I think just over time, I just kept growing and learning, and just improving in every way, just physically, mentally, and with my skills as a baseball player as well. Just over all those years, especially through high school, and just having that postgraduate year kind of just gave me that extra time I needed to get to the point at which I was ready to compete and kind of get scouted pretty much for colleges. And that just gave me that extra time to get looked at by coaches and get recruited. And by now at this point at TCU, I think like I've been keeping up that stable growth, throwing harder, getting in the gym better with our great coaches here, improving physically, mentally. We do a lot of stuff with the mental game here. And just overall, my skills as a baseball player have just improved drastically over this time I've been here.
Russ, you had mentioned something, and I want to let parents know that Russ was a 4-year varsity player at Northeastern University and a Oakland A's minor league player for several years. And Russ, you brought up an interesting term, and I don't think enough parents understand the term, being prepared to compete against men. So can you talk about the difference between the high school years, whether it's summer baseball, high school baseball, to college, and then ultimately professional baseball? Can you talk about that difference to get parents to understand what it's like competing against men?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind there, Walter, is that it's almost like a phased approach. Like the first thing you need is the physicality, and as the body matures, it just everybody's on their own path and their own timeline. But physically, there's very, very few who can do what they do at, let's say, a dominant high school level and bring that into a college level. Usually you are waiting, physically for your body to get to a certain point. You can enhance it, of course, by getting into the weight room. So there's a physicality piece that you just need to have, and time is part of that equation. And then there's a mental side of things where everybody's, at that physical level, let's say in college. And now the mental side of it starts really factoring in. So the mental side of the game, who can fail quickly, right? Who can have that goldfish memory, right? After 5 seconds, they don't remember. So it takes a long time to make that whole equation really equal out, where you have everything you need to be prepared to compete at these high levels. Because when you're competing at these really high level division schools, I mean, there's an overlap with the quality of play to professional baseball, and you're going to need all of that mentally and physically to be ready to go.
So Carson, let's talk about, I remember when you started at Cressy Performance out in Hudson to today. Take us through a conventional day. What is it like in your mind that you may not have thought it was going to be like as far as being a student athlete at TCU with regard to your daily time management and the 9 to 10 months a year of baseball, as opposed to a high school student maybe having a 4 or 5 month window of baseball?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot different, and it's kind of like a little bit of a culture shock in some ways. When I was in high school, yeah, being at Crestview Performance, and working out there and working with those guys definitely took time out of my day. I'd go to classes in high school till like from like 9 a.m. till like 2 o'clock. I'd finish that, and most days when we wouldn't have practice, like over the weekend or some days during the week, we wouldn't have practice, like, let's call it like 3 days a week. Like we wouldn't have practice or do much. And basically I would just go to Cressy's Performance, work out for a couple hours, work with those guys. That would be really, really beneficial to me. But when we did have practice, I'd go to practice after classes for like probably like, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and then be done with the day. I have, plenty of time to, spend time with my family, eat dinner, do whatever I want to do. And that's just drastically changed since I've been here, and that I've learned very quickly, especially after having that first year under my belt. It's very, very different because like I explained before, my schedule, like, especially when we get into the thick of it, when we start like official team practice, we're practicing 6 days out of the week with one off day. We're having inter squads that are like, 2.5, 3 hours long, plus practice before that. On top of that, we'll be practicing for like 4 hours at a time, something like that. And so it really takes a big chunk out of your day, to be and commit yourself to, playing the sport and, being a part of these teams, these big programs. And so I think that's just a big difference that, I've had to adjust to, and has been, it's been fun, but it's also a really big grind in the process.
And Carson, I'd love for you to kind of continue real quick, if you can, about summer baseball. So, when you're a high school student, you play summer baseball. It's occasion, it's a weekend here, one big event, but your summer literally takes you from, say, end of May, early June, right through August. You might have a week or two off if you're lucky to go home, give mom and dad a hug, say hi to your brothers, and then boom, you're back at it into college campus. You just talk about that grind of 10, 11 months of baseball. It's a continuum. It's a job rather than just kind of an extracurricular activity.
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely, that's definitely one of the things I've thought about, just about being in college specifically, is, it's like you're going to school, but you have a full-time job on top of that. That's how it basically kind of feels. But yeah, with summer ball, it's it definitely just depends on where you're placed, where your coach sends you. Because if you're kind of local, you can, every so often when you have an off day, you'll be able to, go back home or not. But I went up to Canada, so in the West Coast League, and so that was a whole new world for me. I've never been to Canada. I've never barely been outside the country before. So just being up there, you live with the host family. You'll be playing, you'll have 6 games a week with one off day. And so you do that every single week till, the end of summer. And so that's like about 2.5, 3 months of that, of, playing just game after game after game. And it really is a grind, and it feels like a minor league schedule where, you're spending, a 3-game series at home. You play like a midweek or something, and then you'll play a 3-game series away, 6-hour bus ride away, stuff like that. So, or we'll fly a couple hours to some place. So yeah, it really is a grind with, just playing those games, every single week. But you definitely have a little bit more time since summer to, kind of, it's a great experience, to bond with those guys over the summer. It's a lot more laid back, in the sense that, it's not as like kind of cutthroat with college, where you're being evaluated all the time. You're there to get your reps, and you're there to kind of enjoy baseball and have fun. It definitely brought a lot of fun back in the game for me, to just kind of play ball with some of my boys, over the summer, and so it was really good to play baseball, but also meet people as well. Meet guys from a bunch of different colleges who I'm actually going to see some of them again. We're playing against some of them again this year, and it's just a great experience to get along with those guys and play baseball. And I just think it's a great overall experience, but for sure, it's definitely a grind over those 3 months.
Russ, I know we have a time commitment here, and I'd love for you to just finish up and wrap up about from a parent's perspective, just the true benefit that you feel that Carson was able to obtain through his postgraduate year experience.
Yeah, again, thanks for having us, Walter. Yeah, I think the best way to put it is you can use whatever phrase you want, time machine, whatever it is that kind of allows you to have additional time to grow in the ways that you need to grow, readiness for the college experience, the physicality, a post-grad experience really solves a lot of that and really makes a lot of sense for a lot of people because the landscape for college sports, particularly baseball, and the recruiting aspect and the readiness to make that jump into college is probably as difficult as ever. Certainly much different and more difficult than when I played and made that jump from high school to college. So post-grad opportunity absolutely makes sense to consider that.
Well, I mean this, Carson. I know that I have a relationship with your grandfather, your dad, and so forth. But out of all the young men I've ever had the opportunity to work with, you've been the most, absolute, steadfast, consistent, persistent student athlete that I've ever worked with. You trusted in your abilities and your process, and I'm so glad and happy that you are able to be an active student athlete at a school like TCU, and I appreciate you taking the time, both Russ and Carson, to join us today and share your perspective on the postgraduate experience. I know I do this wrong. Is this right, Carson?
Go Frogs.
Go Frogs. Okay, so go Frogs. And I look forward to watching you this spring. And for parents, if you have, Russ is active a little bit on social media, and I'll put that contact information if you're looking just to kind of get some perspective on the post-grad experience. But have a great weekend to parents, and thank you, Russ and Carson, for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, of course.